Hello, Home Slices. It's Karen with Home Slice Adulting coming to you with my review for Iyanla Fix My Life, Season 6, Episode 18, maybe? I'll have it correctly down in the title of the video and on the screen as well. Titled DNA Dysfunction, Are You My Father? Part 1. Now, thank you for clicking on this video. Do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, let's just get right into it. I hope you all had a great weekend, a great long weekend. I was dog sitting over this weekend, and there's something about being responsible for someone else's family member or loved one that just kind of makes me nervous. So I was consumed with that and didn't want to distract myself away from that by doing this review. So let's go ahead and jump into it. It's not going to be a long one, but I don't know if you all remember, for those of you who have been watching my videos, I have been talking about how Iyanla's team needs to figure out how to spice up the show by having people with different stories that we haven't seen before. And while a lot of the stuff that we hear in this particular episode with regards to being abandoned by your drug addicted parents, which is, the story of a lot of people who have been on the show before, there's something about this particular show that felt different enough for it to be entertaining and informative at the same time. And there's something almost voyeuristic, I guess, that comes along with getting some type of entertainment value out of somebody else's pain. But again, at the end of the day, when I watch Iyanla, I look for similarities in my own personal life and see what I can do personally to make myself better. If I have any common threads with certain people on the show, and see what Iyanla's, outlook are on those certain things. And I don't always agree with her, and, but, I glean what I can, right? So let's start by identifying who the major players are. So all of this stems from the father. The father's name is Cornelius II. He was drug addicted, and we'll talk a little bit more about him later. We have Cornelius III, who is the oldest of two twins. He's 29. His twin is Cornell, who is the younger of the twins, who is also 29. And then we have Nigel, who's 26, and he's the youngest of the sons. And we find out that the night before they arrived to see Iyanla, that Nigel had some type of breakdown while he was having a conversation with his brother Cornell. And Cornell got the idea from that conversation that Nigel was suicidal and that Nigel had been drinking and possibly abusing drugs. And that's how this whole situation started. With Cornell saying that, he was concerned about his brother. This isn't the first time that his brother has said some things regarding, being suicidal. So, of course, Iyanla goes to talk to Nigel about this, and he claims that he didn't say anything about suicide the night before, but that he has thought about it previously. We find out that he has prostate cancer, and because he doesn't have insurance, he doesn't have the means to take care of himself or to take care of it. He can't take medicine, so he feels like he is slowly dying. And he came off to me as being very angry, particularly because their mother passed away when he said, I think he was 14, he said. So that means his mother passed away 12 years ago. And that his mother was, the person that was there for them. And it's so interesting. It's just very interesting to me. I don't know. I guess there is a very clear distinction because both of your parents are drug addicts, but at least one of them was there. And it's like, okay, you have somebody who abandoned you because he was doing drugs, but then you have someone who was there showing you, like in front of you, doing drugs. They're both bad. But I mean, I think about how many times we qualify that somebody, like, at least they're there for us. Like, oh yeah, she was doing drugs. Oh yeah, I watched her shoot up, but at least she was here for me. I don't know. What do you all think about that? Does a parent get brownie points for being there for you even though they were exposing you to what it meant to be a drug addict? Is that parent better than the parent that abandoned you? I don't know. In Nigel's eyes, at least his mother was there for him even though he was subject to her using drugs in front of him. So I guess it's kind of subjective to, which one is better or which one you prefer over the other. But they were both addicted to drugs. Iyanla wants to know, Nigel, are you high? Okay, and Nigel says no, and I kind of believe him. I don't really have a lot of experience with people who do drugs, mostly because people in my family, to the best of my knowledge, were not addicted to drugs. But something about him seems very lucid, in that I feel like he's telling the truth. But anyways, Nigel became very defensive and was like, y'all not finna just put me out here like this or whatever. And I think two things were going on. I feel like Cornell might have been putting 20 on 10. I'm not saying that Cornell doesn't have the right to be concerned for his brother, but something about the way Nigel reacted and the way Cornell backed off a little bit when they were both talking to Iyanla tells me that Cornell was going off of his past experience with his brother and not so much what happened the night before. That's the way it came off to me. And it's not saying that he shouldn't be concerned that his brother was ever suicidal, but maybe he's putting 20 on 10 so that while they have Iyanla, that he can get them some help. And Nigel is just very weird and defensive about, y'all not gonna put me out here like this, y'all not gonna make me look any kind of way, or whatever. And Iyanla clearly does not like the N-word. And y'all, I've always been on the fence about this because there is a debate within the Black community about whether we should use the word or shouldn't use the word. And knowing the historical context of the word, knowing that it is now used more so in a friendly, I guess, connotation, and trying to reconcile that. And I think that whether you say the N-word or not is a very personal thing, as a Black person. But if you are not Black, I don't believe you should be saying it. That's like, to me, that's a very clear distinction. If you're not Black, don't say the word. Okay? But if you are Black, you have the choice. And I think that's the most important thing. That for so long as Black people, we were denied the choice for what to do with our lives. We had no choice but to be enslaved. And if we were free, we were discriminated against. And then when all the slaves were free, still discriminated against. We still couldn't do certain things. We couldn't drink from the same water fountains. We didn't have access to the same level of education. And to some degree, to this day, there are certain people within the Black community that don't feel that they necessarily have a choice and that they are still discriminated against. And as free Black people now, we have the right to choose whether or not we use the N-word and whether or not we accept it from other cultures. And I think that's the most meaningful part of being where we are right now, as opposed to where we were before. Is having the ability to choose and having the ability to say, for me, I do or don't want to say the N-word because of what it meant today or because of what it meant back then, and how many people, that, like Iyanla said, that was the last word they heard before they were hung for entertainment. White people eating popcorn and whatnot and selling snacks at lynchings, for entertainment. And you have the ability as a Black person to choose whether you want to say it or not. And that's more meaningful than there being a blanket statement about everyone should say it or nobody can say it. You see what I'm saying? So hopefully that made sense. Anyways, Cornell is just concerned about Nigel. And y'all, Nigel reminds me so much of my brother. I don't think he necessarily looks like him. I mean, they're both light-skinned. And maybe he does look like him a little bit. But anyways, but his mannerisms, his the way he gets passionate or aggressive or whatever it is you want to call it when he speaks, he just reminds me a lot of my brother. But at the end of the day, they kind of resolve it, and Cornell basically tells Nigel, like, I don't like when you come at me all aggressive when you know all I do is care about you. You know, the only thing I'm trying to do is love you and get you to the resources that you need. But when you speak to me aggressively and when you get upset, it bothers me. And Nigel apologizes for that. And, says that he knows he cares about him. And Iyanla had a point. Like, if you're going to be this angry and this aggressive towards somebody that you love, how are you going to open your heart to your father when he talks to you about why he wasn't there for you? And, that's something really interesting. And, the Bible talks about that too, about how are you going to have a good relationship with God that you can't see when you don't have a good relationship with the person next to you who you can, and learning how to realize that it's all related and that things are not compartmentalized. And I think that's something that men in society have been trained to not do, if that makes sense. So men like to compartmentalize and say, this is this, and then this is this, and then this is this, and that those things are not related. Whereas women more easily make connections. And I think that's something that Iyanla has to stress when it comes to the men that she encounters, because particularly Cornelius, who doesn't come on the scene till later. Cornelius is the oldest of all the boys because he's the eldest twin by 3 minutes. He's dealing with a divorce right now, and he's saying patching up things with my father is the last thing in a long list of things that I need to deal with in my life. And I think Iyanla is going to have a challenging time getting him to see that your divorce has everything to do with the absence of your father in your life. And it was very hard for him to get that those things are connected. And for me, I think that's easy. Because if your father's supposed to teach you how to be a man, and as a function of that, supposed to teach you how to be in relationship with a woman, how to be a good father, how to be a married person, and you don't have that example there. I mean, for me, one of the things that I really love about my boyfriend is that for the most part, he grew up in a two-parent household with a dad and a stepmom that were married and have been married for years now. And because of that, he's been conditioned to want that for his life. Do you know how hard it is to be married to somebody who doesn't know what a good marriage looks like, or who has a negative impression of what marriage is? It's a challenge because they don't know how to do what they didn't see. And there's too many people out here who are messing around in marriages that they shouldn't be in, that are giving a poor example of what marriage is supposed to be. And because he didn't know how to do it, because he and his wife were only engaged for 4 months before they got married, it's impossible for him to really know what it means to be a husband, for what it really means for them to be a family. And it's unfortunate that he's going through this, but it's all a function of him not having a father in his life. And I think when he sees the connection, that'll help him heal from the disappointment that he's experiencing with his own marriage. So, y'all, Cornelius and Cornell are some cute people. They are very handsome to me. Nigel's cute too, but Cornell and Cornelius, they're pretty cute. Anyways, So we have Iyanla sit down with Cornelius II, which is all of their dads. He says that he was addicted to opiates and heroin. And he basically says that the boy's mama was the one who got him addicted to it. Apparently he was drug free. And he said explicitly that she injected him with heroin, and that led to a lifetime of struggles. Sound like some Barbie and Whitney stuff to me. But anyway, he claims, it's interesting. This is interesting. We'll talk about this. Okay, so he says that he was engaged in criminal activity to support his habit and her habit. So he ended up going to jail. When he went to jail was right after she went into labor with the twins. So apparently the twins were addicted to drugs. Now, mind you, if the person you're with is pregnant and you're engaging in criminal activity to supply their drugs, he is responsible for his children being born on drugs. Iyanla didn't know that. Of course, none of us knew it. Iyanla didn't know that. And she was like, do your children know that? So because their children were born on drugs, their mom's sister, their aunt, had to take them in so that the state wouldn't take them. I don't think they know that. There's something weird about not knowing your own history, not knowing the history of your family, that stops you from fully being who you are. And it's so weird because it shouldn't matter who your family was per se, when it comes to you finding your own identity and finding your way. But there's something about being denied the opportunity to know your history and the history of your family that stops you from fully living to your potential. That's what it comes off to me. We have white people in this country that can trace their ancestry back for ages, trace their ancestry back to Europe, trace their ancestry back to the Rockefellers and, those, the Carnegies. These families have a long history of money and things like that. And I think part of the reason why Black people have such a hard time is that for the most part, we can only trace back our heritage for so far. And all of that heritage is filled with suffering, filled with pain, filled with discrimination, segregation, slavery. It's depressing, basically. And it's like knowing your history gives you something to either rise above or to aspire to. And for me, I think it's both. There are people in my family who I'm like, you know what? I would like to be more like them. Whether it comes to business and money, financial stuff and career stuff, or whether it comes down to more spiritual stuff, being more wise, being more spiritual, being more connected to like your spirit and your soul. And just knowing the history of what the people in your family went through can help you either avoid the same pitfalls, or it can help elevate you and give you something to aspire to. And so I'm under the impression that the boys don't know that they were born addicted to drugs. I'm under the impression that they don't know that their aunt had to take care of them so that the state wouldn't take them away. And being denied that part of their history is going to make it difficult for them moving forward. That's just my viewpoint. But moving on, it's something interesting that Iyanla said that we talk a lot about here at work. So the school that I work at does a lot of DEI work, and DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things that they talk about is how white people intellectualize racism instead of thinking about how it feels emotionally. And it's easy to glaze over something when you can read a book about white fragility. You can read a book about what it means to be privileged and white in America, and to read an article and you think about racism, you intellectualize it, as opposed to really feeling what it would be like to be a Black person in America. The fear that you experience when you get pulled over by a police officer. The fear that you have filling out an application and worrying about how you're going to be received, if they're going to even ask you to come in for an interview because your name is spelled funny, or it's not a traditional name, you know, what it's actually like to experience that. And that's basically the same thing that Iyanla told him. You're intellectualizing addiction and what addiction does to people. Your kids don't want to hear that. They want to hear from your heart what it was in you that stopped you from being there for your kids. And it's, to me, it's less about the addiction and more about why he was led to the addiction. Let him tell it. The what I gathered from it was that his girlfriend, their mom, injected him with heroin, and he was addicted to it for years and years after that. What was it in him? What was going on with him? What happened in his childhood that led him to believe that allowing somebody to do that to him would be okay? That's the stuff that they need to hear. They know you were addicted to drugs, and after a while the drugs and the need for those drugs kind of take over, and that's the nature of addiction. But what led you to that point? What was going on in your life beforehand that led you to be addicted to drugs? And that's, I don't know if that's a story that their dad is prepared to tell them, but the story he is prepared to tell them is that he don't think that the twins are his. And y'all, I don't know either, okay? Because I feel like the twins and Nigel don't necessarily look alike, and it's possible. It's possible that they are his kids. But that shocked the crap out of Iyanla. And she was like, can you say that you not really knowing if the twins are yours, if that could have played a part in the reason why you never went to get them? He feels very sure about Nigel, but not sure about the twins. He claims that his girlfriend at the time, which is their mother, was doing sexual favors in exchange for money or in exchange for drugs. Which to me sounds like criminal behavior, but whatever. Even though he said that she wasn't engaged in any criminal behavior. And he believes that the twins belonged to one of the guys that she was doing sexual favors for. And I'm not saying that his concern isn't legitimate, but for them to be 29 years old and you to just now talk about your doubts seems kind of cowardly. It's like, instead of finding out if these kids are actually yours or not, you just don't be in their lives at all. Or their brother's life, who you believe is actually your child. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, I don't think the twins are mine. But not only did you abandon the twins, you abandoned Nigel, who you believe is your child. He didn't really have any good explanations for me, and I do think he over-intellectualized the fact that he wasn't there for his kids. And that he needs to tap into his emotions. So Iyanla gets the boys together, or gets the men together rather, and tells them, hey, your daddy told me that he don't think that y'all two, the twins, are his, and that he's had doubts. And Cornelius and Cornell were like, this is the first time we're hearing about this. And she's saying, I'm offering y'all an opportunity. We got a 24-hour DNA test. We can get the results in 24 hours if y'all want to agree to it. They all took the DNA test, and their minds are just blown. They didn't know that their father kind of denied them, and that it could have played a role in why he wasn't there in their lives, because he didn't really believe they were his. Yo, that's messed up. It is messed up. And I think it was interesting that Iyanla pointed out that the way they as children viewed his relationship with their mother is different from the way he viewed his relationship with their mother. And I think that this cliffhanger is great, okay? I don't know what it was, even though this is like same script, different cast kind of situation. Lots of guests before have had parents that were on drugs that abandoned them. We saw it with the Mitchell brothers when they came back. We saw it with the other family who, was abused and forced to do sexual acts on each other, the brothers and sisters. We've seen it over and over again, okay? But something about this particular episode actually intrigued me. It was actually entertaining. And I don't know what it was. But anyways, I enjoyed this episode. I am eager for next week's episode to see who the pappy is, okay? So you all tell me what you thought about this episode. I thought this review was going to be short because I only took a little bit of notes, but I had a lot to say on this one. Tell me your thoughts on the things that I said in this video. Tell me what else you thought about this past week's episode of Iyanla Fix My Life, and I will see you all later this week. Peace out, home slices.